Welcome to the Arcopia Show. Today I want to talk about population reduction. So there's 7 odd billion people on the planet, and I don't think that we have a human population problem. I don't think there's too many people on the planet. I think we could comfortably have more people. The problem is the people that we do have are lazy, consume resources, don't take personal responsibility, and are a part of an entire Ponzi scheme type fake temporary system, the system of which works and looks like it's working good temporarily, like this odd, I'd argue, the last 100 years or so, for a variety of different reasons. Central banking, fiat currency for the last 51 years, like complete fiat currency, a welfare state going into debt type of thing, and the inflation. And my argument is that if it is an everything bubble, that also includes the human population, unfortunately. So is it an everything bubble? So we got debt climbing through the roof. Inflation is continuing to get worse and going to get worse because it's at the tail end of a Ponzi scheme system where you can't just print money. It's like, let's say you have a credit card with $100,000 limit on it type of thing. And instead of ever paying down the credit card, you just make the minimum interest payments. And that $100,000 credit card, that pays for your entire life. That pays for your food and everything. And every time you get to your debt ceiling, the $100,000 limit, instead of paying it off or being responsible, you just increase the credit card to a $150,000 limit, and then $250,000 limit. And we keep living fake above our means. And I'm talking about countries as a whole, and not just Western countries. China has debt. Almost every country has debt. I don't think Russia has any debt whatsoever, and they have a lot of gold, so Russia's going to be a superpower in the future because they hold real money and don't have a lot of debt. Don't quote me on the debt load of Russia, especially since the Ukraine-Russia conflict thing. But just picture yourself. We're all living on credit. Just go to the US debt clock, usdebtclock.org, and you can have a look at the debt owed per taxpayer, debt owed per person in the United States. You can look at the gold to silver paper ratios and the fakeness there. Everything's fake. Prior to some of these, a lot of great things came from this Ponzi scheme, like keeping people alive and things. So, but prior to all this fake temporary stuff that's playing out, like the entire system is fake. The money's fake. Everything's fake. So prior to this, the fake system brought a lot of ingenuity and things and healthcare, and we essentially don't let anybody die anymore, which is an absolute fantastic thing. Like, so if a person, poor or rich, but mostly poor, had 6 kids prior to the fake system and prior to advanced healthcare, and like in this beautiful system we created to keep everybody alive, somebody that had 6 kids, 4 of them would die on average. A lot of times the mother would die during childbirth. Men would live to a ripe old age of, 35. And their bodies are worn out and have health problems. A lot of great advancements the last 100 years. Antibiotics, that was a big killer in the past. And some of these things aren't part of the Ponzi scheme, but some are. So, like welfare state type of thing, it's, we can keep these, men and mothers and children, everybody alive, right? Like everyone, nobody dies anymore type of thing. And it doesn't matter the cost. It absolutely doesn't matter the cost, which you could argue is a very good thing, right? But if we have a fake system and so much debt and inflation is here, it's manifesting itself finally. The welfare state is collapsing, right? We're literally out of money. We have so much debt that they can't increase interest rates because the minimum only payment, just interest payments, are going to like take up the entire tax revenue of the United States and things. So we are at the tail end, and we're in for a world of hurt. But it's kind of this, when it's a Ponzi scheme, if you accept the fact that the whole system is this Ponzi scheme, it's all fake and opposite, and nothing makes sense. And a Ponzi scheme you have to either grow or it collapses, right? So you have to have more debt, more credit, more people, more inflation, or it collapses. There's no such thing as, in a Ponzi scheme, finding an equilibrium where prices stay the same, the debt doesn't get worse, the population stays the same. The human beings in general created this bubble, right? And when this everything bubble pops, I think that includes human population. So hear me out. If you look at a chart of human population, well, there's two types of organisms on the planet. There's an organism that creates the species as a S curve. So that's its relatively low population, then it slowly creeps out, and then it equalizes and sustains itself at an S on for infinity until an outside source like a asteroid hits or a volcano erupts or something to kill that organism, or the host dies, whatever organism that it is. That's out of the organism's control. But human beings, similar to a virus curve, a virus kind of is a J curve. So there's an S curve that's sustainable and a J curve. Have a look at human population chart and tell me that isn't a J. The population just astronomically going to infinity and beyond, straight up in a J. Now, what happens when the host dies? Like not some asteroid or something, but a J-curve organism populates, repopulates, goes straight up. It doesn't kind of go out like an S to infinity. A J goes up until it hits the brick wall, the ceiling, and then it collapses. So this is, our debt load. Lots of charts look the same, but human population looks like a J curve. Well, a big part of it is just, like, I got to go back to the welfare state. So if there's a lot of people that are kind of a hemorrhage on economics, on the economic system, so they consume a lot more than they produce. They are not a net taxpayer. They are getting tax. Like, I think the current ratio number is 70% of U.S. citizens pay no income tax. Like, the welfare state's huge. Now, when I say welfare state, if you've heard me before, that means in the finances of economics, the finances, a government worker. So if you have a job in the public sector or work for the government, you are on welfare. In economics, that your existence for whatever service you may or may not provide is paid for by somebody else producing something, or government creating inflation, aka printing more currency, which trickles down, and that's why you see high prices of things. So when the entire society has government jobs or people on some kind of welfare or social assistance, there's a million different ones. Canada is, and the U.S. is a welfare state. This means we have to print more and more money because there's not enough tax revenue, not enough people actually producing something, so we go into more debt. Now, all of these people that are, many of them unskilled, there's a concept called Malthusian. So it's a Malthusian outlook on things is that the human population is growing more than the resources we can provide to keep that human population alive. type of thing. Now, I don't necessarily believe that if we had a population that was personally responsible and stuff. So I want you to picture if the welfare stops, like the government worker, sorry, there's no more money, you're getting laid off. The person on whatever, sitting at home collecting welfare, whether they have a legitimate disability or are taking advantage of it. I've heard comments saying it's hard to get disability, it's hard to get welfare. Well, cry me a river. Like, if my back hurts more than most people's backs, the amount of stuff that I've done, it is not fun. I can't sit down without severe back pain. Am I on disability? No. If your back hurts, are you telling me you can't, like, put an audiobook on and learn some information, or take an online class, or get a skill set that doesn't require physical labor so your back can hurt? Or are people going to just waste their time and collect their check as long as they possibly can, which is a lot of times forever? But are you telling me when the welfare stops, the free gimmies stop, or it doesn't stop, but we have higher inflation and hyperinflation? So those are your two options. We have to take the pill, everybody pull up their bootstraps, and, we had so many free gimmies that we're going to have to do with less. Like, economically, that's the good thing. Increased interest rates is the right thing to do, like significantly higher interest rates to kill inflation, and the welfare has to stop, and things like that. But I don't think that's the course that they're going to take. I think they're going to keep interest rates low like they are today. And lots of people, today is beginning of September 2022. We've had multiple interest rate increases, but not anywhere even remotely close to the history kind of average inflation rate, or anywhere close to, you probably need 15 to 20% interest rates to put a stop to the current inflation. That's not going to happen. They're already talking about more stimmies, more free goodies to help people out during this high inflationary environment, which creates more inflation. But anyways, when all this bubble stops, when the welfare system stops, when everybody's losing their jobs and government jobs, the private sector that, say, you're in, like Canada, US is a service sector. We don't manufacture, it's all service. So building a house is service. Being a plumber for that house, or a plumber repair person, or an electrical repair person, or building decks, or working at a restaurant, that's all the service sector. That's not manufacturing goods or exporting goods, that's service. So when the bubble pops and welfare stops and government gets laid off, it means that it also kills the private sector, because essentially the private sector in this system as well isn't protected just because they are actually doing something and producing something of value. We're all in this together type of thing. So you can't tell me that people are going to all of a sudden, when this collapses, pull up their bootstraps and all of a sudden decide to be personally responsible, go to work, produce something, grow something, build something that makes other people's lives better. All of a sudden, no. When this collapses, people are not going to pull up their bootstraps. I don't think that that's a Malthusian concept. I think that's just human nature, psychology. Like there's literally generations this has gone on for. Like, there's barely a person alive that didn't live before this Ponzi scheme. Everybody's so entitled. Nobody's ever worked like a day in their life on a factory floor or built anything. It's pretty gravy system, which you could argue is very good. But again, this whole system is a Ponzi scheme and it's unsustainable. So when it does collapse, I don't think people are going to have the ambition or work ethic to go grow food enough to survive, go build something or create anything. So what that means is a lot of people are just going to lay down and not exist anymore. So human population reduction. When the everything bubble pops, human population is part of that everything bubble. That's kind of my argument to think about. So if you... Now, this is going to come in many forms when the everything bubble stops. So people are just going to The government doesn't grow food. They don't produce anything. All they do is produce money and hope that other people, produce things. But by them only producing currency or printing currency, that just creates inflation. It makes the goods and services that the few provide much more expensive because there's all these dollars floating around. But anyways, this is going to come in many forms. It's going to be starvation and famine. It's going to be freezing to death or dying of heat without power or air conditioning. It's going to be health issues. People are, malnourishment. In these so-called good times, like people are obese. In this day of abundance, people choose to eat an abundance of, sugar snacks and not exercise. And the health issues, or if you injected something that you're not sure what it is in your arm and it creates blood clotting and heart issues, and you don't have much of an immune system anymore, there's going to be a lot of problems like population reduction from that moving forward. Not all at once, kind of over the next few years probably, but so if we accept all of these things to be truths, what I talked about, and if you agree with this concept that human population is part of the everything bubble, and when it pops, human population is going to reduce, what do you do about it? There is literally nothing to invest in. Okay, if you lose, like when this Ponzi scheme pops, you lose humans, real estate, there's going to be vacant houses. There's going to be a glut of existing houses. Real estate's going to tank. All companies, all stocks, anything on the stock market, anything you could invest in, probably gold, probably silver too, all energy, all commodities, they're going to tank. Even, vehicles tank because you have, X amount of trucks on the road, and then you reduce the population by, just for the sake of math, by 50%, but you still have all those trucks as resources. That drives the price of the truck down. At the same time, though, so it's like, what do you do about it? What do you invest? There's nothing you can invest in. Hyperinflation is terrible for everyone. There's nothing you can really invest in hyperinflation. Like for me, I know it's high inflation, so my product's freeze-dried food and I have inventory, so this is a product, it stays fresh in a package, no special storage for 25 years, and I have long-term food storage, and probably much longer than 25 years. But anyway, so that because of inflation at the tail end of the Ponzi scheme, that's going to, my product's already gone up, my costs 25% on all parts of the product, and then shipping is way up beyond that. So we're going to be doing currently working on this thing. I won't announce too much, but we're reducing, there's two ways I can bring down, another tangent, sorry. Two ways I can bring down the price of a product in high inflation, right? It's more volume somehow, so that's a economic thing. If I can do more volume more consistently, I can work out some things to bring the price down, which I have done. But the others are reduce quantity or quality, right? So shrinkflation type of thing. Well, we're making a smaller smoothie that we're going to announce in next year type of thing, because literally the cost has gone up so much for all forms of producing anything. So as an inflation hedge, that's what I stored. So that's going to go up. But then if population gets cut in half or something, then there's less mouths to feed. So I'm going to have less sales, obviously. And it should, when it all pops, bring prices back down, kind of. But we're still going to have stagflation and high inflation. It's really weird. But hyperinflation, if I'm sitting on inventory or some of my customers stocked up on inventory, it's good in high inflation, but if we reach hyperinflation, that means like most people don't have a ton of investments or inflation hedges, and things like my smoothies could go to, $5,000 Canadian a smoothie, but I'm not going to sell very many because they're $5,000 Canadian a smoothie. So you can't even do that in hyperinflation. So both in hyperinflation, population reduction, everything bubble popping, There's only one thing that you can do, and that's self-sufficiency and hyper-local needs to fulfill, such as local food of some kind, right? Or some kind of energy production or something that the remaining people need, for sure they need. So I always go back to the basics: food, water, shelter, security, and you could throw energy in there. So food's going to be important, storable food's going to be important, ongoing production with low overhead is going to be important, or no overhead is going to be important. So let's say you've been building up all your soil, so you have really, really good soil, and then you can produce like vegetables and things for like no ongoing cost or very little. Let's say you figured out a water system, so it doesn't take a lot of energy and you always have water, so you can actually produce some food. Let's say you put up pasture fencing ahead of time that's going to be good. Don't have to do anything for 25 years, 30 years. You can pasture animals to create some meat. That doesn't have a lot of cost. Let's say you built a properly built chicken coop that's well insulated, and you kind of figured out that system, and a good fence and a big run for the chickens, so you don't have to feed them at all or as much. They can kind of free range around and be protected by predators. Not a lot of ongoing cost, and you can still produce things. So it doesn't matter if the population's reduced by 10%, 50%, or 90%. What I'm setting up, the homesteading preparedness aspect of things, and self-sufficiency, hyper-local, and being just the thing you set up is economically viable. Now, at the tail end of this bubble, and in this bubble, you look like a idiot loser, right? Like, why would you bother wasting your time? Like, I can just, go to my cubicle, have all these days off and holidays and sick days. I can go on disability. I can, don't have to go to work. I can go on vacations, and everything else is provided for me in this bubble system, right? Well, so you look, if you're homesteading and doing all this, you look like an idiot to the average person. But as this plays out after, like, we're at the end of it, so everybody thinks they're richer, higher real estate prices, higher stock market things, and when it all pops, then all their investments are down, and real estate's down, and their jobs are lost, and everything, like they're fake jobs. You need to go back to the absolute fundamental things: food, water, shelter, security, be economically viable, hyper-local, not be subject to high shipping costs. That's what I mean by the hyper-local thing. Not be subject to more regulation. That's selling food in person kind of thing, because you can't even invest in silver or gold or Bitcoin with a population reduction. You can't do any of that. Everything's going to tank and go down until we enter a new free market, sound money system again, with personal responsibility, hard work. So, and how many years or decades this is all gonna take to play out eventually. And the cool thing is, not cool thing, but this could all be avoided. So let's say we slowly wean everybody off of welfare and make people, you have to bring back Darwin's theory, bring back some struggling. Like, if you're on government workers shouldn't be like the elites of society. They're a public servant to the taxpayers, right? And it's a extremely bloated system. But all this could be avoided if we reduce the welfare state, went back to sound money, increased interest rates, so there's some temporary pain, and everybody kind of just as a whole became more responsible. So freedom and responsibility is the same thing. You can't be free without being responsible, and you can't be responsible without being free. They're not synonymous, they're exactly the same, freedom and responsibility. So if everybody all of a sudden became responsible, this could all actually get fixed, and we could avoid catastrophic death, like human population death. But is that going to happen? I don't think so. I don't think multi-generational like government workers gonna all of a sudden, you know what? I'm a hemorrhage on the taxpayer. I'm not doing anything, like providing any real value here. I'm going to quit and I'm going to go, do an apple orchard or start this business and try to provide real value in the world so that I can, be a net taxpayer for the system and things or whatever. And instead of a hemorrhage, that's not going to happen. The people that have a gravy welfare social assistance type of system of some kind, yeah, and if you're one of those people that are going to comment, oh, well, it's hard to get welfare and hard to get disability, and I need it because my back hurts, I lost my leg, I have a really low IQ or something or whatever. Okay, I know, I'm just telling you how it works in economics and what's going to happen. If you don't wean yourself off of welfare, then it's going to be catastrophic failure for you. And it's going to be catastrophic failure for everybody that's attached to that extreme Ponzi scheme system. So the private doctor's office, is in Canada, it's essentially socialized in part of the Ponzi scheme, but that doctor could, hire some nurses, treat it like a business, reduce his price, be in competition with other doctors' offices. So maybe this one has a massage chair or a leather chair, and this one, the office is grubby or they don't keep it clean. Somebody can decide, I want to go to the discount one. And then if there's multiple private doctors, they compete for business essentially. Like this guy is a straight shooter. He does a better job. His office is cleaner. He's got better nurses. And he gets to the point and solves the problem. So that's somebody that I would go to if I had a choice for healthcare. But instead in a socialized healthcare, it's you essentially, if you need a procedure, you're probably going to be dead before the procedure that you booked is ready for you, type of thing. But, we could privatize, so a doctor would have to run his practice as responsible, type of thing. A nurse could be in the private sector. There could be, private security firms, private firefighters, or communities could put together these things as a whole. Everybody could pull up their bootstraps, and this could all be avoided, and we would save who knows how many lives, but everybody has to do it kind of at the same time. So that is a solution. It's not going to happen, so we're going to hit the brick wall full speed, and when the Ponzi scheme's done, it's unfortunately going to include human population. So there's going to be a human population collapse. Now, it's for the people that are personally responsible, aka value freedom, aka are a prepper, as they call them today. It's going to be hard on everyone. So when people are hungry, it's going to be some terrible years, like the starving and the freezing and the hordes of people that are not responsible, not prepared, part of the Ponzi scheme, like I'll give you some of my Tesla stocks that went up 20x during the worst pandemic in history. I'll give you my Peloton bike. I'll give you my pontoon boat and hot tub for some food. It's like, no, I don't want useless Tesla stock. Like, that's going to nothing or next to nothing at the end of the bubble. Hot tubs, they're a dime a dozen and useless, right? You have to go food, water, shelter, security, your necessities. So no, I'm not like all these people they think they have assets. Like, hey, do you want these designer jeans? I paid $100 for them, but I'll give them to you for $30 worth of food. No, I'm not interested. Like, yeah, we're not as a whole going to pull up our individual bootstraps, take higher taxes, take higher interest rates, pay off our debt, create a sound money system, take a little bit of pain to save the lives of innocent children and things. It's going to be brick wall full speed. Nobody's interested in doing that. Everybody's interested in enjoying, not worrying. Maybe they don't even know until it all stops, and then it's brick wall full speed. They don't have energy stored, they don't have food stored, they don't have water available, they don't have sanitation, they don't have heat in their homes, they don't have anything. Nobody has anything. Because when it collapses, you're going to lose everything. All of these big, fragile system that make life good, but it's a temporary, unsustainable good, right? A good example of this, outcome of the temporary good is one of my favorite movies, Idiocracy. So it's essentially the dumber people in that show have much more kids, especially in the intro. It was a great introduction, and the smart people that are busy at their jobs, they're trying to plan out when to have kids, and they're planning it and end up it's not a good time in the economy right now to have kids, and they get too old, they're freezing their eggs and all this scientific stuff because they waited too long to have kids, and then they end up getting divorced and then really old and then don't have kids. Meanwhile, the lower IQ population, the ones that, aren't concerned with the world and the economy and their career and, business and their job and everything, they're the ones having, 6 to 12 kids per person at an extremely fast rate, right? So it's almost like the higher IQ people that you wanted to reproduce, they're so busy producing value, and they can actually see that the world is maybe not a very nice place to raise a family in the future, so they decide not to have kids at all. Or lots of people wait until they're way too old to have children, whereas the people who you don't necessarily want to produce too much, but they're having exponentially more kids and faster, to the point where it's almost a generation is half as long as somebody that you'd probably want to reproduce. Somebody you want to reproduce, the time frame between the generations is double as long because they wait to have kids, whereas people that just have kids because the government's going to look after them, right? The government's the daddy now, right? You get the paycheck, doesn't matter what happens. You got the full extent of the health care, doesn't matter the cost. The entire raising of that kid is paid for by the government, essentially just inflation. And when you have so much of it and multiple generations, and the population gets so big so fast of maybe the people you don't necessarily want to produce or reproduce as much. Yeah, if that's the nicest way I can put it. But it did come at a cost of human population being part of a everything bubble I could argue. So, let me know what you think about that, if that theory makes any sort of sense to you, if my trying to explain it, scared the bejesus out of you, because it's scary stuff when you think about it. And even if you're personally responsible, if you there's nothing you can do about it. So that's why we call them preppers, and they get ready for it. The elites know what's happening. The super rich know what's happening. All the smart people know what's happening. Just a tiny percentage of people that can see the real world type of thing are getting prepared. But we're all in this together. It's going to be terrible for everybody, but at least you might have the opportunity to survive and be one of the population that continues on. So, and how big is the human population bubble if this is an everything bubble and human population is part of the Ponzi scheme? What is the population going to reduce to? I'm not too sure. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. What's interesting is we have all this technology now. We have alternative power, we have solar technology, we have battery storage, we have water pumps, we have insulation, we have new building material that are all things that whether it's the resources are put together and above ground already, or just the knowledge of things, that that might be a saving grace for, a lot of the human population that would otherwise, be gone. So instead of a 50 or a 80% population reduction, maybe because of that knowledge and technology and sophistication that we have and above ground resources, maybe instead of 80% population reduction, or 95%, like all of the elites say that they would like to reduce the population by 95% to 500 million people for sustainability and things like that, and they call the majority of the public useless eaters. I try to look at their perspective, and it's possible that they are kind of correct, that they are useless eaters because they're not contributing anything, and they're hemorrhage on things. Like, this is their elite perspective that I'm trying to have the view of. So this is how my mind works when I obsess about things, when I see the opinions of the ultra elite, the ultra rich, the CEOs of corporations, and the homeless person, and the young person, and the college student. You can kind of see, this, which kind of draws me to this conclusion of human population being part of the everything bubble. Let me know what you think about that. You guys have a wonderful day, and stay cool if it's hot, stay warm if it's cold where you're listening. Keep on preparing. I have a feeling it's going to be a rougher winter, and unfortunately for me, I've been usually much more prepared, so more firewood, more food, more canning done, bigger outside garden. I've just been so busy finishing the greenhouse and business and a million other things that it would make sense that this would be a hard winter or something that happens because we did less canning, have less firewood, and that would be my luck. But I have a feeling it's going to be a cold, long winter for Europe, Canada, USA. But we'll see what happens. Keep your head up, keep working, do what you can. And who knows what the future holds. Take care.